Welcome to Merlin's Stamps. This is going to be the study of Czechoslovakian stamps. This is now called, of course, the Czech Republic. In this series, I'm going to concentrate on the time period of 1939 to 1945, which was a time period where the invasion by the Nazi regime of Germany into Czechoslovakia for 5 years. I got started in stamps and postcards back in the 1960s. Back then, when you drove into a gas station, people ran out, checked your tires, opened the hood, checked the water, the oil, showed you the dipstick, and then washed your windows. And one of them came over and handed me, we were at Standard Oil at the time, Union Oil, and handed me a postcard, which were made by Union Oil back in that time period along the West Coast, of different pictures along the coast. I was fascinated. I was very young, but I was fascinated. So I took that and I started a collection because they were free. All you had to do was walk in and they were free of charge. Then stamps. When I was in school, because I have a Czechoslovakian last name, kids used to ask me where I was from. And I went, gee, I don't know. I'm from somewhere down the other in Longview. And they all kind of just looked at me. So I went to my father and he told me that we were Czechoslovakian. We came here basically after World War I. And that we were originally farmers, and the family was farmers in the Midwest, and he had moved here to work for Boeing. Now, so since my family name was Czechoslovakian, I wanted to learn the history. The easiest way to learn a true history of a country is to study the stamps that they have produced, because that is a study of who was important, what important items happened, and who cared about what. Okay, the overview for today's course is we're going to talk about dead countries. I'm going to give you a short history of Bohemia and Moravia, and talk about the types of stamps that they actually, because we're talking about such a short time period that they produce these stamps, we were very lucky that there was only either the stamps were engraved or they were photocured. And if they were photocured, basically what happened was the cheaper stamps were. The more expensive stamps were engraved. And you were only perforated at 12.5 or 14. Unfortunately, in today's world, a lot of stamps, the perforations are all over the place. And, you know, when you talk about 12 3/4 and stuff like that, these are fairly easy. All right, let's talk about a dead country. A dead country is a country that is made, that they have a government, everything is laws passed, stamps made, and the actual industrial portion of the country runs. The problem is, after a short or a long time period, the country actually dies, goes away, and is replaced. A lot of this has happened, of course, in Africa, and this happened in Czechoslovakia. Czechoslovakia became a dead country when Bohemia and Moravia, which is a part of Czechoslovakia, became a dead country. It was invaded in 1939, and in 1945 they gave it up. Let me give you a brief history of that time period. Basically, Czechoslovakia was just a bunch of states, until after World War I. Okay, so after 1919, basically, Czechoslovakia became a state, an independent state. And they did fairly well. They were very industrious people, and they did very well. Very mountainous, where Prague is at. Prague is, of course, the capital. Prague is in the mountainous areas, and it is a beautiful area to be. In 1939, the German army invaded Czechoslovakia. Now, when they invaded Czechoslovakia, they basically were given full reign by the rest of the world. And they did. They just literally walked in. Now, the reason they walked in is because the people in Czechoslovakia, a lot of them were from Germany. So they wanted those German nationals to be part of Germany. All right. It worked fairly well. It was good until they sent in 1941 an SS officer of Reinhard Heydrich. Reinhard Heydrich was a horrible individual. He basically instituted many laws and etc. that were far in the world against everything that was going on. Heydrich was assassinated. He had his open car. He would always drive in the open every morning to go to work. And he was literally on almost his last day of work because he was being called back to Germany. And he went around a corner, a very tight corner, and two Czechoslovakian, I guess you would call them assassins, I'm not sure if that's the right word, attacked him. One of them tried to shoot him with a gun, and the gun jammed. The other one threw a bomb, and the bomb blew up, but it didn't blow up in the car. It blew up outside the car, sending shrapnel through the seat. Well, the seats had just been reupholstered with horsehair. And horsehair, of course, carries germs, etc., etc. And so he was peppered, Heydrich was peppered with this horsehair that went into his body. Well, guess what? The infection that followed literally killed him. All right. In retaliation, they literally leveled several villages, killed everyone, women, children, everyone, old, everyone was killed. And it was really quite terrible. They still have stamps today commemorating these people who died. Now, the goal of the Germans at this time period was to the assimilation of the Czech people into the German countries. So they did away with anything that was German, or anything that was, Czech, the language, whatever they could. They forced you to speak German, etc., etc. Now, on March the 15th, 1939, when Bohemia and Moravia of Czechoslovakia was invaded, they literally just walked in. And within a day or two, literally owned the country. And they called it a protectorate. Well, it actually became nothing more than a workhorse for the war machine for the German government. They only issued stamps for 5 years. 5 years, that was it. And after those 5 years, basically they did some pretty good work. They were all printed out of Prague. They did good work. It was done by the Czechoslovakians, but under the direction of the Germans. The stamps were of good quality, and they still are today. And you can find, in most countries, it's very difficult to find blocks of 4. It's easy to find, not easy, but you can find blocks of 4 of almost every one of their stamps because there were a lot made. And of course, when the war came to an end, boom, everything changed. All right, the Scots and the Michaels catalog. Now, those of us that deal in stamps also deal in the Scots and the Michaels catalog a great deal. The bottom line is, in the Scots catalog, The Czechoslovakia, when you go to Czechoslovakia, you'll notice that it comes to a complete end. It doesn't say another word after March of 1939. And then it just magically starts again in about April of 1945, 5 years. And there's this gap. Well, actually what they've done is they've included the Bohemia Moravian stamps at the end of the Czechoslovakian listing. So if you go to Czechoslovakia, you'll see that in 1939 there's nothing there, but in 1945 you're going to see that they starts all over again. Just go to the very end and it'll say Bohemia Moravia. Now with the Michael catalog, they don't, if you go to Czechoslovakia, everything goes fine until you get to that 1939 and in Czechoslovakia, and then it just drops to 1945 and it says, go see Germany. And that's exactly where it is. It is located in the Germany occupation at that time period. Okay. I usually use Scott almost exclusively anyway. I don't mind using Michael, but Scott is, it's just the way it is. We use them. All right. There were 183 varieties, and they all have a story to tell. They really do, because some of them were political. Some of them were to get the people behind the party, but things didn't always work out as they wanted. Some of them were to get money for war relief and etc. You got to remember, Czechoslovakia became a powerhouse in making weapons for Germany, and they didn't want to lose that because the Czechs were very good at what they did. Now, the first 19 stamps, because you've invaded a country, the first 19 stamps literally are not from Bohemia. They are from Czechoslovakia. Basically, what they did is they took these 19 different stamps from Czechoslovakia and overprinted them to say, this is a Bohemian stamp. Here's my best example. And you'll see that these are regular Czechoslovakian stamps, and you can actually go to Czechoslovakia and you'll see these listed, but you can see that each and every one of them has been overprinted. Now don't worry, we're going to get into this very, very carefully because these stamps here tell a story too. Okay. Alrighty. Each program I cover will be a specific area and year block of stamps. Some of them are really, really beautiful stamps because some of the engravers did beautiful work. We're fairly lucky that most Bohemian stamps have not been reproduced or fakes made because they weren't worth it. There's a few that they did make fakes of, but I'll show you very quickly how to distinguish them because they were made to sell to stamp collectors, so they had a little flaw on them that basically said, this is for stamp collecting. Okay. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate everything. I love doing these programs. And until then, goodbye. And have great collection. Do great in your collection. And remember, never look down upon a person unless you are picking them up. Thank you, and God bless.